Seeing so much poverty everywhere makes me think that God is not rich. He gives the appearance of it, but I suspect some financial difficulties. Victor Hugo says that in Les Miserables. I admit there are times I question things. There are things I just don't understand. Maybe I ask, why does God allow this? Or why doesn't he intervene? Life doesn't seem to end all happy and predictable like the ending of a lot of TV shows and movies. One scripture that I so appreciate is in Mark chapter 9, where Jesus tells the Father that anything is possible if a person believes. And the Father so wants his Son to be healed. So the Father responds by saying, well, I believe, help my unbelief. Now, here's my own personal translation of that. I feel like the Father says, I want to believe, but I'm struggling. Really struggling. Help me overcome my doubts and my unbelief. You see, Jesus honored this Father's willingness to admit that he doubted, yet the Father still trusted. Here's how we often think, though. We think, well, if God's good, there's no way he's in control of things, or he wouldn't have let that happen. Or we think, I'm not even sure anymore that God exists, because if he does, I don't want to have anything to do with the kind of God that would let something like that happen. And our enemy, Satan, leverages that kind of thinking to create a barrier between us and God. But faith, it's not about logic. In the book, Hope in the Darkness by Craig Rochelle, he says faith is not a math problem or a language problem or a philosophy problem. It's a matter of the heart. You see, in the midst of the pain, it can be hard to reconcile the pain we feel with the image of God that we want to believe in. But God honors those who sincerely seek truth in the midst of doubt, just like that boy's father. And what I appreciate about Scripture is that it doesn't avoid these kind of tough questions. More than a third of the Psalms are prayers or songs of people in pain. David expresses his thoughts in so many of them. The authors of Job and Lamentations and Ecclesiastes and Jeremiah, they express confusion and doubt and the pain or just the unbearable suffering endured sometimes by faithful believers. Even Jesus, he questioned his Father's will in the Garden of Gethsemane, that he trusted. The book of Habakkuk, well, Habakkuk asked many of the same questions. In fact, the name Habakkuk means both wrestle and embrace. Craig Rochelle says to really know God, you have to wrestle through the pain and struggle with the honest doubts, and even live sometimes with unanswered questions. You see, you meet God in the midst of your pain if you wrestle with him and you seek him and cling to him. To be clear, doubt is not the problem. The problem is when you don't have humility. Doubt is not a virtue. Humility is a virtue, including intellectual humility. Culture would say, doubt God, doubt Christianity, doubt the Bible, believe whatever you want to believe, accept whatever you want to believe. But humility says, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to choose to go to God who does have the answers. I choose to believe in spite of my doubt. Like the man who longed for his son to be healed, and Jesus said, all things are possible if you believe. You say, I believe. Help my unbelief. Where do you take your doubt? Who do you trust to provide the answers? See, John Eldredge says, you can choose to keep searching for the why, or you can seek God. Did you hear that? You can keep searching for the why, or you can have God. In Jeremiah chapter 29, it says, you will seek and find God when you seek him with all your heart. Think about it. If you understood everything completely and fully, you wouldn't need faith, would you? Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Hebrews 11 says that. Faith and trust emerge from love, not from a forced relationship in which you have no choice. Philip Yancey says, human beings do not readily admit desperation, but when they do, the kingdom of heaven draws near. I believe the Father honors our questions, our sincere doubts, our deep hurts, and they draw you closer to God than you've ever been before. But do you believe that? Believe in spite of your unbelief. Trust that God will provide what you need. Trust that he is a loving Father working for your good and for the good of others. He is a good, loving Father, doing everything he can so you know him, so others can know him, and he wants to provide exactly the restoration you need.